Live.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for attending the today's Performance Scrutiny Committee Partnerships meeting here on Wednesday, the 7th of January. So, first of all, I have to read out, just to remind colleagues, obviously, of expectations for this evening's meeting. So the Scrutiny Committee meeting is being conducted on a hybrid basis in accordance with the Local Government and Elections Wales Act 2021, which will operate alongside the Council Standing Orders. The Council Standing Orders and Code of Conduct will apply at all times, and members should conduct themselves accordingly. A recorded version of this meeting will be uploaded for public viewing as soon as possible after the meeting. Welsh translation of the proceedings can be provided upon request. The images and sound recording may also be used for training purposes within the Council. So thank you for listening to that reminder, colleagues. So the first point on our agenda today is apologies. Is there any apologies, please?
No apologies, Chair.
Thank you very much, colleagues. And for the second part, any declarations of interest for this meeting? No, I see none. Thank you very much there. So we'll move to the first substantial report, which is the Gwent Regional Violence Against Women, Domestic Abuse and Sexual Violence Strategy Progress Update there. So for colleagues, pages 3 to 12. If I can ask the Cabinet Member, would you like to come in initially on this one?
Yes, please, Chair. Thank you all. So the report sets out how Newport is delivering on its responsibilities under the Violence Against Women, Domestic Abuse and Sexual Violence Wales Act 2050 and within the framework of the Gwent Regional Strategy 23-27. Although the strategy operates on a regional basis, the accountability for delivery and outcomes locally sits with Newport, and the responsibility is one that I take very seriously. I'm pleased that the report shows strong progress in key areas over the last 12 months, particularly around workforce training, prevention and awareness, youth engagement and partnership working, and reflects the leadership role Newport plays as a host authority to the region. Before going any further, I do want to formally thank the teams across the Council and our partners who deliver on this work day in, day out. This is complex, emotionally demanding work, and the progress outlined in the report is very much down to their professionalism, commitment and care. I also want to thank members who continue to champion the agenda, not only just on White Ribbon Day, but throughout the year, and who understand that tackling the VAWDASV requires sustained focus, leadership and collective responsibility. However, the report is also very honest about the challenges we face, including demand gaps in data and performance information, pressures on service and the difficulty of sustaining provision throughout the short-term funding. These are not easy issues, but they are exactly the ones that we need to be grappling with if and when we are serious about long-term change. I want to reiterate that while this work is complex and the challenges are real, the direction of travel is the right one. Newport is meeting its statutory responsibilities, playing a lead role regionally, and most importantly, continuing to improve how we support victims and survivors. What will matter most going forward is that we keep this agenda very visible, properly resourced, and firmly embedded across everything we do in the Council. And that requires ongoing commitment from officers, partners, and members alike. And I am confident that with this collective leadership, we can continue to strengthen both our response and impact.
Thank you very much, Cabinet Member. And do we have an officer that would like to introduce the report for me as well?
Yes, I'm happy to do that, Chair, thank you. So, yeah, as the Cabinet members pointed out, the report outlines the sections of the Act and the functions relevant to Newport and the assessments being made on Newport's progress in these functions. But I just wanted to go through a presentation, if that's okay, Chair, just covering off some of the progress in the last year. Thank you. So looking specifically at Section 8 within the Act, which is the duty to implement local strategies, the Council is represented within the regional arrangements for delivery of the strategy and the action plan, and significant progress has been made in the last 12 months embedding VAWDASV prevention, protection and support in the Council's agenda. So some specific examples of progress. That's it, thank you. So in housing, we've seen frontline professionals face challenges in the last couple of years, particularly in relation to couples who are rough sleeping and domestic abuse that's occurring between couples who are rough sleeping. And frontline professionals are struggling in sort of determining the dynamics of the abuse and identify who's the perpetrator against who's the victim. So VAWDASV team has been embedded within the multidisciplinary team ending rough sleeping panel, and that panel in housing has benefited from VAWDASV expertise, and not only in terms of deepening the panel's understanding, but also designing and delivering targeted training for staff and ensuring that lessons learned we've had from domestic homicide reviews have been embedded into approaches when supporting individuals. So some of the outcomes that we've seen within that piece of work is improved safeguarding, because we've got staff who are now better equipped to identify risk factors and intervene earlier. There's been enhanced decision making as well, because there's a clearer framework in place for assessing complex couple dynamics, which means that couples who are about sleeping getting more support and sort of holistic support. We're seeing increased staff confidence as well because of the expertise and the training that has been provided through VAWDASV. So frontline professionals are able to approach cases with greater clarity and confidence. And we've also seen practice development shaped as well, with domestic abuse considerations now central to providers' work with rough sleepers. So we've also focused on specialist training as well in the last 12 months. So one of the big successes we've had in our training is our multiple and co-occurring needs training. So this training looks at trauma and the impact of trauma and multiple complex needs on the brain, and how we can support individuals in a holistic way to achieve sustainable outcomes when there are sort of challenges such as domestic abuse, mental health, substance use, homelessness and offending behaviour. We've seen 34 practitioners trained this year, and each of those practitioners that are trained become part of the single point of contact network. So they act as the SPOC within their organisation, and then this network that we facilitate for them enables them to come together on a regular basis to share practice and kind of have peer support as well. So if there's anything they sort of want to discuss or they want to reflect on, we're sort of facilitating that for them. We've also seen quite a demand this year for understanding perpetrator training. So we've run several training courses around this. This is enabling practitioners to understand perpetrator patterns and behaviours, which is helping us support early identification. We've trained 114 practitioners in the last year, and they've come across social care, housing and health as well. And one of the other sort of successes we've had in training is domestic abuse effects on children and young people. So obviously children and young people, they have their own support needs when they witness or they are victims of domestic abuse or VAWDASV. So we've got a designated training course which has seen 82 practitioners trained this year. So again, you know, it's really supporting children and young people being identified as victims in their own right, which also cross-references with Section 3 of the Domestic Abuse Act 2021 as well. We have undertaken some significant work this year around children and young people. We've had the internationally acclaimed She's Not Your Rehab visits Gwent, and Matt Brown, who is the advocate for She's Not Your Rehab in breaking cycles of domestic abuse, self-worth and healing, has visited and done some workshops with 150 children and young people this year. He's also visited a couple of local schools and done a session with 200 professionals as well. Even though this was arranged on a regional basis, the majority of the children and people and professionals came from Newport because it was held in conjunction with the Dragons Rugby Club. So we've done some really groundbreaking work there. We've also seen delivery of Youth Ask and Act. So learners in Lanwyn High School underwent a programme where they received training, so the youth equivalent of Ask and Act, and then from that they went and formed a peer group where they developed messages and work around healthy relationships, consent and anti-violence, and they've been delivering that to peers within their school. We've also seen the Empowering Futures project. So this is a project that is run by a specialist sector provider. It's very prevention focused, but we're seeing some great results in terms of children and people and the confidence to challenge harmful and societal norms. And the project is also mobilising children and young people as allies in their community as well. So, you know, the outcome of this work is that children and people are becoming active agents of change to break cycles of abuse. We've seen some fantastic partnership working in the last 12 months as well. So some examples there, we've got the remote evidence site. So the remote evidence site is a site that's used as an alternative to victims of domestic abuse and sexual violence trials attending court. So it's a site that's sort of trauma informed and allows victims to attend and give their evidence via a remote link. The previous site was at the end of its lease in February last year, and it needed to be relocated. There was also issues around funding and sustainability challenges for the site as well. But there was significant partnership working from the VAWDASV board, Gwent Police, His Majesty's Courts and Tribunal Service, New Pathways, who were the previous provider, and the Office for the Police and Crime Commissioner as well. And the result of that is that we've successfully relocated the res, and we are able to offer sustained special measures for victims in Gwent. And then we've also had significant partnership working around campaigns and awareness raising. So, we've done the White Ribbon road shows, we've done some work around National Stalking and Harassment Week. Elder abuse awareness has been a significant focus for us as well. We've reached approximately 1,000 professionals and public in the campaigns and awareness raising that we've done, and that's all been as a result of the work between Health, Canol Women's Aid, the Safeguarding Business Unit, and the Live Here Free Helpline in the PCC's office as well. With regards to section 15 of the Act, so that section outlines the power to issue statutory guidance, and we've got statutory guidance in relation to the National Training Framework. So the slide just captures, so NCC is on the end column on the right, but the slide just captures NCC's performance against the other relevant authorities in the region for Group 1, Group 2 and Group 3. I think it's important to point out that for Group 1, that performance is only ever a snapshot of a single day, because for the column when it says staff total, that obviously we have staff starting and leaving on a regular basis throughout the week. So it is a snapshot of a single day. But then in relation to Group 2 and Group 3, you can see that Newport has done sort of relatively well in achieving their target towards Group 2 last year. And then in relation to Group 3, so all the targets are set by the local authorities themselves. But then we do have challenges with Group 3, because Group 3 training is a full day's training. And obviously when we're targeting sort of social care workforce, we do find that there's challenges with attendance because of obviously conflicting priorities or more urgent cases coming up.
Can I clarify just before we go into that? Can we go back to that bit? Thank you. So we got on Group 2, there's a couple there that have over 100%. Can you just clarify those, especially one that says, like, I think that's 1,234%?
Yes, so in that, so what's happened with both Caerphilly and Torfaen is they've arranged the training within their local authority. So they've actually secured an additional resource to that comes through the regional team, and they put on additional training sessions themselves and targeted specific groups within that training. So the figure is inflated because they achieved what they set out to achieve with the help of the regional team. But then because they felt that there was so much more they needed to do, they got somebody trained up in their HR team to then go and deliver that training to the rest of the organisation.
Thank you.
Sorry, Tig, I was just going to say on that note, so some of that data will overlap with the figures in the report that was brought to scrutiny last year as well. So just to caveat that. Thanks, Taylor. So on a very high level, we have seen a number of successes. So we're continuing to work towards embedding VAWDASV across a whole system. And we are seeing VAWDASV becoming more business as usual now across all the departments and the directorates. We've worked really closely with Health to target delivery of training, and we've done awareness sessions to primary care staff outside of an Erbyn, so the GPs, the ophthalmologists. We've done lots of training with and awareness raising. And then we were fortunate enough to receive additional funding from Welsh Government last year, particularly capital funding for target hardening, and the extra funding from that meant that a third to the quarter of the annual total of IDVA victims could be provided with target hardening items last year. Despite the successes, we have seen a number of challenges. So, as Cabinet Member mentioned earlier, data is quite fragmented across agencies, so that limits our ability to measure impact. However, we have found in the last sort of 6 months, we are benefiting from support and input and resource from Public Health Wales to look at how we can overcome that. We still have marginalised groups that face significant access barriers. Again, we're looking to overcome that sort of in a specific area. We've secured funding to deliver training to social care and housing practitioners around supporting those who've got no recourse to public funds. So we're doing quite a bit of work on that at the moment. We're continuing to see an increase in referrals for high-risk victims going into MARAC, and sufficient and sustainable funding. It is always a challenge due to the annual grants, and obviously lots of the services are underfunded. But the Regional VAWDASV Board regularly monitor these challenges via their risk and issue register.
Amy, just for clarity, because this goes to the public, what's MARAC as well, please?
Oh, sorry, MARAC is Multi-Agency Risk Assessment Conference.
Thank you.
So, sorry, I have to check it. It's where if you come into contact with a victim and they're assessed for domestic abuse and they score 14 plus or more on the assessment, they're considered high risk, so they're referred into a conference for immediate safety planning and support.
And so it's just obviously in the public domain, so it's just so obviously people will be like, what's this?
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, just to cover off the VAWDASV regional partnership then. So there's been representation from a wide range of partners. We have some very committed members. Thank you to the strategic director as well, because the board membership has been refreshed in the last 12 months. I know Tanya's worked really hard in sort of contacting colleagues and liaising with colleagues around that. We now have the specialist sector engaged, and we have His Majesty's Court Tribunal Service represented as well. There are still challenges with attendance and membership for some relevant authorities, so local authorities and health. This isn't unique to Gwent or the VAWDASV board. The board continues to work collaboratively to deliver on priority areas. So, a focus for them at the moment is data, looking at performance and measuring impact. And as I mentioned earlier, we benefit from close partnership with public health. So we are unique in our region. There's no other region in Wales that has that close working partnership with public health, and they are very supportive. And they've been leading our work around data and VAWDASV needs assessment for us. And through various representation channels and sort of conduits, we have continued collaboration and strong links with the Safeguarding Board, the Local Criminal Justice Board, and regional partnership boards as well. That's it. Thank you, Chair. If there's any questions.
Thank you very much, Dave, for that report. So if I go to my colleague, Davis, if you want to come in, Councillor Davis.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I want to first say that I didn't realise the complexity that goes into doing these reports and bringing all the different agencies together. So well done for that. I did notice though on page 9, where it says with regards to, just bring it up a minute. With regards to the mechanisms needed to ensure full executive level oversight and regular reporting, ensuring that senior leadership, scrutiny and cabinet are continuously informed and proactive. I just wondered if there was anything else that you've been able to do to make sure that all that is collated together.
that, Chair, if I may. So members will be aware that there's been the development over the last 12 months of a Newport corporate safeguarding board, and that was developed on the back of the Audit Wales report that reviewed the corporate safeguarding arrangements across the council. And I've had some recent conversations with Amy actually about how we can start to bring the VAWDASV agenda into that corporate safeguarding space to add another mechanism to what is already in place. So it's coming here, you know, we have a VAWDASV board which Newport hosts, which I think puts us in a strong position. So just to answer that, I think that we've been given some thought about how we can expand the knowledge, understanding and awareness of the VAWDASV agenda further across all directorates of the council. And I think the safeguarding board, because all of the heads of service for each directorate sit on that board, so I think it's the perfect mechanism to do that.
Thank you. Another question I've got is with regards to the Youth Asking Act, with regards to the work done at Llanwern High, is there going to be anything in the future with regards to the other comprehensive schools in Newport, or is it just for Llanwern High?
No, so it's Llanwern High piloted the programme, and the programme comes in 3 phases. So they've just moved from sort of phase 2 into phase 3 now, but we're sort of evaluating and taking lessons from that. So when it comes to run in the other schools, then we're sort of learning from how, you know, the challenges or the issues that Llanwern have had, but we're working really closely. In fact, the key is the education safeguarding team in Newport. So they're key to us engaging with the schools and the success of that programme. So it will be rolled out eventually. It's just Llanwern is sort of phase 1 then, really.
Thank you. Another question I have, sorry to keep on. What is being done to help medium risk survivors with long-term support?
So that is a challenge at the moment. We are currently exploring with health a model of support that we can put in place. Unfortunately, we are struggling with funding sustainability. So we have a model, we have an idea of how we can execute that model, but we haven't been in a position to secure sufficient sustainable funding to implement that model and do it safely and meaningfully at the moment. But it is something that is high up the agenda in terms of priorities.
Councillor Davis, a second. So, Councillor Bright, I think you wanted to lead on to a question about clarity on this one. Did you want to come on to this one?
No. Well, thank you, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Davis sort of asked what I was going to ask really about medium risk survivors, and I've done a little bit reading on that myself now. So yeah, that's sort of been answered now, to be honest. But thank you.
No worries at all. Thank you, Councillor Bright. Okay, sorry about that. Councillor Davis, those are all your questions there, sorry.
Yeah, I think that's all of them. Just one point I'd like to make though with regarding to survivors' feedback. With that, I think it gives the capacity then to improve effectiveness and trust with survivors and the rest of the feedback, the rest of the designers of reports. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Did anyone want to respond to that, or before we move on to the next person, just to make sure?
Just that we absolutely support that. This is a very important point, and you know, we work with the providers of services that are around the VAWDASV board, and that is something that we we look for and gain and use to influence the delivery of services.
Appreciate it, thank you. Councillor Whitehead, I can see you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's just an observation on page 10, if somebody can just pop that up. The campaigns and awareness raising, attending community events, etc. There's a lot of talk in there aimed at men and boys, etc. And I speak as somebody whose mother went through terrible times with DV in the 70s, and I mean proper old school domestic violence. This, as we knew later on, can happen both ways. I mean, and I think that should be inclusive of everybody. It's aimed particularly at men and boys. There are women out there, mind, that can express themselves wisely. The other observation is, because clearly a lot of work has gone into this, and it is something that is close to my heart. It can come across to a layman as very layered. I will say that because it's a lot of work has gone into this, and there are so many ancillaries, different departments working together, so it can come sometimes as a little bit confusing. But when somebody goes through this system, let's just say, for example, how can you tell when somebody, so to speak, is classed as fixed? And is there always that door left open? I would imagine it is. It's just something that I'm asking, because a DV for me is something my mother took to her grave. You never get over being a victim of particular heavy violence, so it will be with you forever. And I suppose the point I'm making is a little bit about women in the modern times can also be perpetrators. It's not mentioned in that section, and also the route and the door will always be open, and people can will always be hovered above then, if you like, just in case there's triggers or a new relationship and it goes again. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Councillor Whitehead. I think that two really valid points there, and I think that it's something that probably Welsh Government needs to think about, because if you consider the legislation and the title of the VAWDASV is violence against women, and you're right, I think that there will need to be a sea change in the terminology and the language that we use in this space going forward. So it is a point well made, and we absolutely do recognise that perpetrators can be both women and men.
Thanks for that. And again, it's not a criticism, because this is something that is close to my heart. But I just think the more modern we are, I mean, with social media in particular, I mean, it's platforms like TikTok, for example. Some of the things you'll see on there, and unfortunately kids see it, and a lot of things, including DV, learned behaviour, and that's not just in the home. People like myself, for example, when I was a child, I was like, I will never emulate what you did, but not everybody is like that. And with the advent of social media, there's a lot of copycat stuff, and I think that type of thing needs to be kind of looked at as well, access to that. I mean, Australia, as you'll know, literally, I think last week or the week before, banned children under 16 from accessing social media. I know this is a different probably conversation outside of this, but that is something that will could help in learned behaviour and copycat behaviour through social media, because I do see some terrible things on the old TikTok platform in particular, and it's emulated.
Thank you, and I think Amy wants to come in to say more.
Thank you. So yeah, just on your point, Councillor, about women as perpetrators as well, obviously the policy and the legislation talks to domestic abuse and sexual violence against women, because I think it's recognised that women are disproportionately affected.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But in relation to, despite the legislation and the policy, we do equally focus on sort of male victims as well. And we do actually run training in Gwent for male victims. Our perpetrator interventions, although we do not have very many, again because of funding, we have interventions that women can access. The same for those in same-sex relationships or the LGBT community as well. So it's tailored around the sort of dynamics there. So just to offer that reassurance. In terms of your point around the door being left open, absolutely. Every victim is sort of made aware, they exit when they're ready to exit support, and they're always made aware that, you know, that they can come back, as well as there's other places that they can tap into for support, such as the Live Fear Free helpline. So they always know that there's somewhere that they can go, and we're also doing quite a bit of work this year on speaking to older victims and raising awareness in older victims, because like you said, that stigma, it kind of stays with them. So we're doing quite a lot of work with them to let them know that it's not okay, they can disclose, even if it is historic sort of experience as well. And then, yeah, that's balanced up with obviously the work around the online harms. It's ever evolving, and we think we get on top of it, and then something
else. It's an invisible scar. It'll be carried forever, isn't it? But I note as well nationally that there's campaigns around misogyny, etc. What is the version the other way around? I've sat and thought about that. So, and I'm not saying that that's not a good thing to, because of course it's a good thing to highlight that misogyny is out there. What would be the other way around then for women? Because a lot of stuff, and bearing in mind, I speak up mainly, this is about my mother, and it always will be, because that scars everybody. That, like you said, you mentioned earlier on that children witness these things. So it does, and it affected me, you know, it still does, I suppose, if I was to think about it. But also there's, like, with men and misogynists, so to speak, what's the female version? Do you know what I mean? I've often thought of things like, maybe I'm overlooking it, but I think you'll get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think your point is absolutely valid. I think I'm not aware of anything that exists that targets sort of females in that manner, but I think again it's probably because the legislation and the policy draws back to a focus on prevention, on men, you know, boys and young men and males, and that's sort of clear. You know, the UK government released their violence against women and girls strategy just before Christmas, and there's a focus on prevention in relation to sort of men and boys as well. So I think until the legislation and the policy starts to changes wording, there will be that kind of continued focus then on men.
Sadly, it's an area that is evolving. I mean, and I don't think it'll ever go away. But I mean, even something like male rape is probably years ago was hardly heard of, but now the figures will tell you that it's higher than ever. So it's something that this will always serve a purpose, and I think it's, you know, these things need to be spoke about, because, like you say, the stigma and stuff. I don't like stigmas. I don't think people should be and stereotyped, and, you know, and taboos. I dread things like that. I think people should be empowered to speak out. So even like I just mentioned there about male rape and stuff, the more that people come out, you'd be surprised that the statistics are there, and they were always there. It's only through talking that we can gather all that data and put it together and just say, look at this, wow. So things like this are mega important, and I think you do a fabulous job, all of you.
Yeah, thank you. If I could just follow up on a couple of comments around, just to provide that reassurance to the councillor there around the early help and the preventative work that's being done. You know, thankfully, this is an issue that's far more reported and talked about and discussed much more openly than it was in previous years, thankfully. We absolutely recognise the importance of working with children and young people as early as possible. We're well aware children are witnessing things at home, online, and we are working really hard with Amy and her team, really getting that whole narrative out into communities, into spaces where people are able to talk about what's going on for them in a safe way, without necessarily having to escalate into a specialist or crisis situation. It's about running the conversation into communities, whether that's through our youth groups, whether it's through schools and education. But it is about recognising we know young people are witnessing things at home and in the communities on social media. We're trying to respond to that. It's a massive challenge. We're well aware of it. The evidence tells us that's what's happening, and we need to be responding to that in the way that we can with the resources that we've got. So we have got some really good initiatives going on in the communities where we can start to have some of those conversations and bring it more into the open than it already is. But it's, you know, it's going in the right direction, and that's what I would suggest. So I just wanted to offer that reassurance about we are recognising that and trying to do something about that in terms of early help and preventative measures to prevent young children mimicking and copying the behaviours at home or elsewhere.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Actions as well, Councillor Whitehead. Obviously, bringing in a personal experience can be quite traumatic sometimes, so I do appreciate that from you bringing that up as well, and feel comfortable to do so. So thank you. I will move on to the next colleague. Thank you, Councillor Hussain, for waiting. If I can bring you in for your question, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think maybe part of my question might have been answered because some of the information I think was in there what Councillor Whitehead had asked, but I'll ask it anyway because it might be some other information. I just wanted to ask about the groups, the LGBT groups, migrants and older victims and male victims. I just wanted to ask, given like the challenges that's been identified, I wanted to know is how is the help and the partnership, how are they working to access and improving access for these groups? Because I know that there's a lot more older victims and also like Councillor Whitehead had said, male victims as well.
I'm happy to answer. Can I just clarify, Chair? Sorry, Councillor, I couldn't hear you very well. So can I just check? Are you looking to understand how the partnerships that operate across VAWDASV are working to improve access for older victims and male victims? Is it?
Yes, LGBT victims and migrants.
Okay. Yeah. So the partnership. So we have within the structures of the partnership, we have a protected communities and characteristics subgroup, and this subgroup looks specifically at the protected communities and characteristics, and we look at we dip sample data from across organisations. So we recently dip sampled from sort of police, health, specialist sector, and looking at what the take-up is by those, you know, if individuals are coming into those services, and if they're not coming into those services, is it because they don't feel represented or because they don't see themselves in those services? So we're doing some work around that, and then whilst in doing that, we're also sort of tagging it alongside campaigns specifically aimed at, as I mentioned earlier, older victims or male victims, and then seeing, you know, what are the reasons why possibly they may not be coming forward or they may not be reporting, and then look at that subgroup looks to build a bridge between the two, so we can make sure that for those in protected communities or those who with protected characteristics, including disabled people as well, like they can see themselves in their services, so they not only have the confidence to then go and report, but they feel reassured that they can get that support and have their needs met when they walk into that service as well.
Well, that's great to hear. But a follow-up question on that, with older victims and migrants, what's in place for those victims that might have a language barrier?
So specifically for older victims, we have older victim support workers across the region. We also have a dedicated older persons IDVA, an independent domestic violence advocate as well within the IDVA service. And then for migrants, obviously BAWDASV are our provider for all things in the region in relation to minority ethnic communities. But then where there is a language barrier, we tap into resources such as Language Line and interpreters then to make sure that there's nothing that, you know, the needs can be met then, and there's nothing that's going to be missed or misunderstood.
Yeah, no, that's actually great to hear, because I know I am actually a volunteer interpreter for BAWDASV, but I just thought maybe, you know, other members might not be aware that they have got their own pool of interpreters, and I think, like you said, they also use language line when they can't find anyone available. I just also wanted to say that, you know, the work that you're doing, it's really good, and it just, you know, after listening to the report, it kind of sheds a light on all of the work that's involved in, you know, trying to get all the data and the reports and everything together for, you know, for committee meetings like today. And the other question I have is about funding. With you know, the funding pressures, do you find that it's affecting maybe the services, or, you know, victims are maybe having to wait this longer waiting times?
So in terms of the funding affecting services, I think that's one of many things affecting services. You know, providers have faced challenges in, you know, in relation to things like the NI increase contribution in recent years and things. So the funding, it just keeps getting squeezed and squeezed what they do get. We will always have, unfortunately, waiting lists for victims, and whilst we try and tackle those waiting lists where we do get extra money in, the demand is such, because the services are so kind of under-resourced and the funding is not sustainable, that we will always continue to have waiting lists. We've got significant waiting lists in Gwent for our sexual violence counselling, for example. But what, you know, what I would like to say is, in relation to the specialist sector, where they are finding their budget squeezed in relation to service delivery, they are often, if not always, dipping into their reserves to make sure that services for victims are not affected. So we are sort of starting to see that more and more now, is they keep dipping into that reserves part every year to keep topping up the things, the gaps that are not being able to be met through funding or sustainable grant funding.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for all the information and the hard work that you're doing, to all of you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hussain. If I move on now to Councillor Peterson, please. Thank you for waiting.
Thank you, Chair. My question comes off the back of the training I received in December. We've just come through the festive period, and I got to go through the dreaded task of visiting the in-laws, which we tend to do once annually. And it was in the forefront of my mind from the training that, as part of a relationship, you do stuff that you don't want to do for the benefit of your partner. And I thought to myself, because it was on the forefront, would I accept doing that every weekend? I'd put my foot down and say, no, I'm not doing that every weekend. I'll do it once a year. And then that got me thinking then of, is there space within the strategic plan to help young couples, like moving into their first homes and stuff like that, to set what is a healthy, functioning relationship, where you do what you don't want to do for the benefit of the relationship, and then where to put your foot down to say, well, I'm not doing it, because I think that could create a pattern long term if one partner is always getting their own way and knowing where that boundary is. So I thought, maybe is there scope within a strategic plan to work with our housing partners for the new couples moving in, because that's when the boiling pot happens, when you're norming and storming, to set good ground rules to help prevent it for future, so you don't get into the violent side of it because one partner is used to getting their own way.
I think I'll start to answer that question. I don't think what you've described there, that I can think of at the top of my head, that the local authority delivers anything like that. However, you know, if they were to go on and have you know, a family, there is a lot of parenting support that is available, you know, to support parents and what is the right way to parent children, and you know, helpful hints and tips and things like that. But I think that it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because you learn your parenting from what your experience has been. But I don't think off the top of my head that there is anything. And I've got Caroline Ryan Phillips with me, who's the head of our prevention and inclusion team, and she'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've got anything that we deliver for people entering new relationships. And Amy will correct me if I'm wrong as well, I'm sure.
No, you're absolutely right in what you're saying. What I can add to that is what we do have is a place-based model in place, where what we're trying to do is have greater visibility in communities, where we've got easier access to officers, somebody to talk to. So if there are issues that are arising quite early on, you know, again, it's about prevention. So if somebody can have access to talk to an officer in a space that's safe and confidential, you know, we can try and signpost and put in that early support and advice and guidance before things get to a point where it becomes difficult. That's all part of our place-based model, which is about being at the heart of communities and for residents to have access to people to talk to without having to have long referrals or waiting lists, etc. So it's about easy access to support in the moment when they need it. So that's probably as much as we can do. It's a fine line, isn't it, in terms of how far we can intervene into individual personal relationships. But what I can say is when individuals are recognising for themselves, do you know what, I'm not comfortable or I'm not happy about it, there are places and people to talk to, and they can be signposted too. But yet, nothing specific, as Tanya has already mentioned, but we are increasing our presence in communities so people have someone to access and talk to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. If I can bring in Councillor Scrutiny now, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, the question I got is on the data and evidence. Obviously, you know, at first I say that, you know, the presentation is very useful and interesting, and it's a great pity that in the 21st century, you know, we are still addressing these issues. Anyway, having said that, data and evidence, which is critical to making objective decisions and plans. There are 2 points to the question. First of all, how much of a challenge is it to get this data and evidence? And secondly, how will the public health strategic needs assessment help to improve the amount and quality of evidence? Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'll start with that. So the strategic needs assessment that public health are undertaking and is looking at all of the data that we currently gather across Gwent, which includes a lot of police data, if you think about it logically, because that's where a lot of these things get reported to. So from a data point of view, the police currently hold the richer source of data, but it is only one part of the puzzle. So public health, in fact, I've got a meeting this week with them to review the progress that's been made on that that strategic analysis, and we have a workshop planned in February this year to bring that information together and get and really answer in more detail, Councillor Screen, the questions that you are posing, because it is a challenge. We are grappling with it. We do have a piece of work that is underway to help us get to an end point where we can be clearer about what information have we got, what is it telling us, and then what are we going to do about it. But there are gaps from other partner agencies. For example, we wouldn't be able to tell you how many people turn up to A&E and have disclosed that their injuries are as a result of a domestic violence incidents, because they simply don't capture that level of information in that way. But that's not to say that we don't recognise it, and we can try and move towards that point. So can't give you a full answer today, unfortunately, but when we report next year, I'm hoping that we'll be in a much stronger position about the level of data that we have and how we're using that to shape services.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you for that response, and I look forward to seeing what progress has been made next time we see you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Druitt, did you want to come on the back of that question?
I think that my question has just been answered, actually. So not on the back of that.
No problem. Did you want to bring in your question?
Sure. First, the statistics relating to violence against women, domestic abuse, sexual violence are truly shocking. This is an age-old problem. Controlling anger and power in intimate personal relationships. As a society, we're slowly revealing the true extent of this. I just want to say that thank you to Councillor Lacey, to Amy, and to all the team for this report and for your work in this very demanding area. My question is really about future generations. What actions has the regional partnership taken to identify, challenge and mitigate the impact of political or ideological or social media opposition that may undermine public understanding of or support for the VAWDASV agenda?
I think Amy's touched on this, and I'm sure she want to come in, about one of the priorities within the VAWDASV work plan is about engaging with children and young people around this agenda. And within the presentation, there was reference to She's Not My Rehab, which is basically engaging with school-aged children around this agenda. And also we've touched on in this meeting about social media and how fast things change and how we're really struggling to keep pace with the challenges that poses. So we do have work programmes in place. It is a challenge because it's a shifting landscape all the time, but we're doing everything we can to meet that challenge.
What about the political agenda that we see in some countries?
I wonder if you can elaborate on that. So, in what sense?
Let's take the US, for example, where there's a movement that would go against the VAWDASV agenda.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of role modelling. It's very, it's very difficult for us officers for us to become politicised, as you will be, very aware of. But it's about what's morally right and wrong. And certainly all of those moral messages are embedded within the way that we operate and we practice.
Thank you.
I think, sorry, just so on that point, what we are trying to do with, and it is a challenge because of obviously general population and the scope and as you referred to the statistics, is we are using things like the sound campaign, the Welsh Government sound campaign, to try and normalise talking about behaviours and sort of pulling it out and saying that's not right, that's not healthy, and using those campaigns, particularly in an adult arena. But with children and young people, they are the ones that tell us what's coming through. So not so much on a political agenda. We have a challenge with influencers, and what they are promoting and lifestyles and things like that. But we engage regularly with children and young people through the services, through our specialist sector, through, for example, Ymddiheuriadau High School, and they are telling us, well, this is what we're seeing on TikTok, this is what we're seeing on Snapchat, and then thus giving us intelligence, albeit it's not captured in any great detail because it evolves so fast. but it's given us intelligence so that we can then pivot and say, right, we need to focus on this within our awareness rating. And what we learn in one session with a group of year 9s is giving us information that we can then bring into and tailor in the next session with year 9. So we're constantly updating based on the work we're doing with them, and we're using them sort of to tell us what's real and what they are seeing and what they're experiencing, so we can make sure it's relevant to them, and then obviously target those areas that you've referenced.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Just obviously I understand where you're coming from a political point of view, is what we're seeing, but I think we have to be really cautious, don't we, of how much we can put into this strategy and report, and what really has to be handed back off to parents, to teachers, you know, and actually bringing pressure onto social media in terms of false narrative. I know that, you know, there's some awful stuff going on with the AI that's going on at the moment with Elon Musk, where, you know, it's just horrific. And so we have to, there's only so much that you can put within a strategy, where then we, I guess, as politicians, we have to put that pressure on our other politicians, and also for them to put pressure onto these big companies to remove those harmful behaviours from social media, for example. And as Councillor Whitehead mentioned earlier on as well, as to what we see on TikTok, and potentially going down that route of removing social media for children, you know. But also, you know, I think we have to take that onus on individually, each of us, and, you know, make sure that our children are being brought up with what is morally acceptable and correct. And then also as governors, where we sit on those schools, to make sure this is at the forefront of the agenda when we sit on the school, to ensure that our governors are trained on the VAWDASV, the schools are trained on the VAWDASV. This is rolled out to pupils, because really they're the strongest advocates for this, aren't they? You know, and then how do we stop this by teaching that generation that it's not right? But we do then have that challenge of the likes of Andrew Tate, what's going on in America, all these different things where, you know, it is suddenly becoming okay to be violent publicly, and it's not okay. And, you know, it is a worry, and, you know, but we have to make sure that the teams and the officers can do what they can within their remit, but then each individually we have to be going out, don't we, and doing what we can under our remit as well. But you are right, it's scary times, I think, and, you know, I think our kids are what we teach them, right, what we can do.
Thank you.
Coming over as well for that. Also, it brings to light something that I've seen in media recently about the Irish government basically trying to get other governments in the European Union to work together, because images and stuff like that and videos now of being able to manipulate young people and dress themselves, and it's not in real life, it's just literally what AI is able to do. So it is concerning. As long as we know and we keep on top of it, I think that's as much as we can ask, you know, of each other in that side. So thank you for that. I will do a round robin in a second, but my question mainly focuses in relation to training of councillors. If we're going to be leading by example, obviously we should be undertaking Group 6 training, and I know a lot of us have already done so. I suppose it's a two-part question in relation to the first part of what current percentage roughly of members are we at within the Newport Authority, and basically, you know, where are we going forward with this, because I know it is being monitored, especially with the audit committee and things like that coming up in January. So it's just a kind of thing for where we can be, but is there anything else that we can do as members to try and obviously persuade colleagues to ensure that they see it as important as it is?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Councillor Marshall. So I can actually tell you reasonably precisely, because I've just finished the report for Governance and Audit Committee. It's going in January. So as far as the basic VAWDASV training, which is the Group 1 training, we're around about the 50% mark of members that have done that. And I've been working today with our head of safeguarding about putting more sessions on and measures in place to support, because we've just gone onto a new learning platform, which may have contributed to some of the barriers for members being able to complete that training. So I'm very mindful of that. So we have got some dates in the diary later this month, early February, to support members to complete that Group 1 training, and those emails have gone out today, in fact. With the Group 6 training, that's an interesting one, because it is very focused on strategic leaders to around thinking about VAWDASV from a strategic point of view and supporting a culture change to make sure that the language that we're using, the policies that we're setting are aligned to the VAWDASV agenda. I think one of the things we need to maybe unpick a little bit is, who do we classify as strategic leaders? Do we classify every single member as a strategic leader, or do we classify, this is something I think we need to discuss a bit more as a council. I'm just throwing things out there, is it certainly it would be the officers, the chief exec, and there is training, all heads of service have been asked to attend the level 6, the group 6 training. But from a member perspective, we've achieved 50%, just over 50% of the group 6 training. That's after there's been 3 opportunities for the members to attend. And that is it's not a full day, it's a 4-hour training. So it is quite a big time commitment, but an important one. So we'll be looking to see what we can do going forward, about maybe put in another session on, although that is, we have had 3 sessions as a local authority already.
And obviously it's a difficult one also, because my understanding is it's where it sits on the mandatory level with WLGA and things like that as well.
Exactly.
But obviously as a local authority we're trying to push obviously to be about still-friendly council. So it's about how we as leaders within the local authority, whether or not be this side, but also like cabinet, us as local members, things like that, to showcase that we are actually, culturally doing what we can to make it easier for people to live and to access services.
I'll pick that up. 50% is not something. Wrong you. But yeah, no, it's not. 50% is I was quite shocked when you said that when I was talking.
Our general safeguarding training is at 86.
Yeah, we got that up. That was
So
my last year's goal to get that up. So this is 50% is not. And we've sat there. It is a long training, but it's important. And officers give their time to do that training. Therefore, members should be attending that training. So
Appreciate it, thank you. Just to round robin, is there anyone online that wishes to ask any final questions on this report, please? No, and if you're not, that's fine. Okay, thank you. And anyone from the room?
I'll just go on one question, Chair. Obviously, with your strategy publication, you commenced that in 22, and it came out with this 23 to 27. So when do you start on the next one now, on the next publication, when do you review it and make one? Is it this year or is it next year that you start?
We'll be working on that this year.
Yes,
so
the VAWDASV Act states that within 6 months of a Welsh Government election, the incoming party has to produce the strategy, and then we have a time frame after that strategy is produced to produce our regional strategy. So we will start working on this towards the end of the year after the election later this year. We've got an idea of where the sort of.
I'm sure that you've got more stats. I think that's all you look quite different to the ones. Just means that you don't want continuation. Obviously, you get more information to that, but now
yes.
I think we've got the central government, the UK government violence against women strategy that was released before Christmas as well. So. And the Crown Prosecution Service have also released their strategy in relation to VAWDASV. So there's lots of sort of hefty things coming, which we'll need to consider for the next sort of production strategy.
As I say, you have some good grammar to do soon.
Okay, thank you all. And I think if I could just refer to know if there are any notes or anything to bring forward, just to remind us as committee.
Sorry, Chair. So just comment from Councillor Druitt and other members of the committee praising the work of officers producing the report and ongoing work. Councillor Whitehead's comment emphasising the importance of recognising that perpetrators and victims that can be of any gender should be reflected in all communication and training materials. Committee requested a progress on data integration and impact of efforts on service delivery can be clearly reported in future updates. with examples of how the improved data is informing decision making. Other than that, Chair, is there any other comments or recommendations the committee would like to make in regards to the report?
I think just the one Kevin will follow up on the training as well for members.
That's not Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. No, that's fine. Thank you very much. I'll just make sure when we're ready here for the this part. That's fine. Yeah, thank you very much there. So the second substantial report for this evening is the Safer Newport Community Safety Partnership Mid-Year Report 25-26. So I will bring in officers just a second. Just a reminder to colleagues that joined a little bit late online. If I can ask just to avoid city centre questions where possible, not to stop you from doing, but more the fact we've got a meeting in March where hopefully we'll be able to get a more fulfilled one there. So if you can keep any questions about the city centre for then, hopefully we'll get a lot more from that meeting in general. So I appreciate obviously to take that on board if possible. So thank you. And on the report, if I can ask who's going to be introducing this, is it yourself, Janice?
So we've got a presentation to go through, if that's okay, please, Chair. Councillor Hughes is going to start with it, and then we're kind of taking a section each.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes.
Good evening, Chair. I'd like to start really just by thanking our officers and partner agencies for the really challenging work they do in keeping our residents safe. I think you'll see that most of the report highlights much of the focus has been on strengthening process and collaboration, especially within the Safer Places working groups. I'd personally like to thank my colleagues in Cabinet who have been really supportive and play a part of that collaboration really, in particular Councillor Lacey, Councillor Clark, Emma Corton, Saeed, Aiden, and it's that collaboration I think is key to how we progress this. And the work undertaken by our officers as well, I think, and our partner agencies throughout. It's a 24/7 piece of work, really, as you can imagine, and our officers are incredibly able. So we're all really determined to achieve the goals within our core objectives, which I say is to strengthen that collaboration, innovation, and processes at the heart of this. And I'd like to thank, you know, as you can imagine, as a large city, the challenges are complex, and we talked about a few of those in the previous agenda item, and they're numerous and they're daily, and it's a credit for me to the staff to the work that they do in this area, and I'll pass on to my colleagues. Thank you.
So I think Reese is going to come in next. If you can flick through, please. So we should be on slide 4 by now. I know Conscious Reese isn't very well, so
it's okay. Are you gonna play the slideshow, or because it isn't being played at the moment? It's just in.
Oh, he's just coming out now. Jordan's just doing it.
Yeah.
Reese.
Okay, I'll just start and go. Yeah, apologies, Chair, Committee, and try not to pass on my lurgy at the moment. So bear with me. So yeah, so thanks very much to Councillor Hughes for the introduction there. So I suppose just to put this into, so to remind the committee, Community Safety Partnership is a statutory partnership as defined by the Crime and Disorder Act. There are a range of statutory partners, local authority, the police, and Chief Superintendent Jason White is online with us this evening as well to support and answer questions, and myself and Jason jointly chair the partnership in Newport. Iron Bevan Health Board is statutory partner, South Wales Fire and Rescue and Probation Service as well. So the statutory partners, but there's also a range of other partners, and I think Helen and Janice will mention, I suspect, some of those as we go through the process. Okay. Thanks. So strategic priorities within the plan. Sorry, I'm struggling because the slides keep changing.
Which slide is it meant to be on? This is the right slide, but it just keeps changing back and forth. Yeah. So I think Jordan's got it now, Reece. I think if it's no problem, Jordan, we're happy to share our screen.
Yeah, it's just because that's fine for now. It's when it switches over because we're sharing Reece's screen live as himself live as well as presentation.
Okay, shall I turn my camera off, Taylor? Will that help?
Yeah, it just means we can just have the slide as a focus rather than, because we've got to switch out to change the person over.
Okay, I've done that now. So right, strategic. You come out of this presentation again now.
Yeah, so that's what I was choosing. It should be bigger now.
Is it possible to show this?
Right.
It should be full screen now.
I think that's right. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so strategic priorities, areas of focus within the plan and within the report are around antisocial behaviour, safer places, serious crime, and communities of focus, and communities of focus stroke vulnerable groups. So that the title of that has changed during the course of the plan. But we've also introduced an intelligence subgroup. So the previous item talked about the importance of data and intelligence, and that's really critical for community safety. And we'll pick that up as we go through each of the priority areas in there. That actually, whilst we have a plan which has been agreed by council and that we're working towards, actually the community safety partnership needs to be really reactive to what's going on in the ground as well, and responsive to those things and adaptive. So having really good intelligence is massively important for that. As a partnership and against the requirements in the plan, we've made, I would say, good progress over this period of time, over the first 2 quarters of the year. When we get to year end and we do our data analysis and look at the data associated with antisocial behaviour and crime, obviously that will give us a much better idea about the impact we've had. But as a partnership, we've got a strong partnership foundation in Newport that isn't the same in other places. We've got a really well attended partnership and really bought in and engaged partners. So the statutory partners, but also a range of other partners that work really closely with us. And that's a real strength in Newport. Can you go back, please? Because you've just changed slide. Thanks. So, that gives us a really solid foundation to work from in order to actually do what we're trying to do, which is reduce crime and disorder across the city. Okay, do you want the next one? Thanks. As I said, strategic progress achieved. We'll go through each of those within each of the themes, and we'll get a better idea of that. As far as the partnership structure is concerned, well attended partnership arrangements, but also I think it's really important to say to the committee, really good engagement in joint planning and activities as well, which is the thing that we're really looking for here. And a lot of that's coordinated through our all chairs meeting. So that's bringing together some of the activities that we're undertaking through maybe safer places and antisocial behaviour, for example. Consultation plays a really key part. So a lot of consultation was undertaken when we were developing our strategic needs assessment and our plan, and that continues throughout the work that we're doing at the moment, because actually what we're trying to do is make it safe for our communities. And again, going back to the previous item, similar challenges around ensuring we've got the right data that's telling us about the right issues in the right places, so that we can be more responsive and adaptive to those challenges. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. So I'll take over and kind of just walk you through some parts of the subgroups and key areas of work. So obviously there's a fair amount of detail contained in the report, but we want to look at some specific pieces of work to give you a bit of a snapshot of kind of on the ground work that has developed. So as we said, engagement has been really key and has been really meaningful over the first 2 quarters of this year, and hopefully long into the next couple of quarters as well. And has made ASB subgroups made really good progress, and part of that we've also integrated that operates across Newport ASB strike process system, which looks at offenders of ASB and kind of moving them through a process. So we've integrated that now into part of the ASB subgroup structure, so that it has consistent monitoring and can be part of kind of data monitoring for us as well moving forward. But that's a very operational group. It looks at individuals, names, locations, and we do that in partnership with all our key partners, but also multi-agency from within Newport as well. So we have early interventions present, youth and play service, youth justice service, Newport Live. So it's a big room, it's a big table, but really meaningful conversations that help us understand the needs that are out there. But a particular area of focus, and this leads on from really what Rhys has just mentioned in terms of community engagement as well, is conducting an antisocial behaviour impact assessment. So what we know is that data, raw data of reporting can tell us one thing, but it doesn't tell us the whole picture. And what we're really keen on doing is considering, what does antisocial behaviour mean to residents of Newport, how they experience it, and how does that impact on their day-to-day life? Not just whether they report it or not, but what does that mean when they walk out of their house and they're walking their children to school, or they're doing their daily life activities. So that impact assessment should be ready at the end of this financial year and will be able to be presented into the next financial year, and will form part of our ongoing strategic needs assessment for Safer Newport. But this just illustrates kind of that community engagement and what that's looked like. So there have been 17 public events attended, and that's been done as multi-agency work as well. So we've got a lot of community events to ensure turnout. In-person discussions, around 200 people individually have engaged with this conversation when we've been able to glean real life experiences and challenges. Online survey, 48 completed an enhanced online survey, and then what we trialled with this one as well was getting some real snapshot impacts from social media, so short polls on social media where they could link into the longer one if they wanted to, but 43 completed it just through Instagram social media in itself, and that had a reach that we knew that 304 people had seen it and had kind of maybe passed on answering it, but were aware that we were conducting work into it. So we're hoping that that will give us a really good understanding of what services and provisions are needed outside of purely reporting ASB, and give us a bit more in depth into the impact there. So that should be, that's a watch this space, and to be continued on that one. And then the next one we're looking at is community of focus subgroup. As we mentioned, that has changed names from vulnerable group subgroup, because we thought that that didn't necessarily put the right emphasis. So this is looking at communities of focus where we feel that they are more likely to be impacted by crime or disorder under the Act, and so looking at them particularly. So that will include looking at Gypsy Roma traveller community and any aggression or disorder they face. Violence against women, domestic abuse and sexual violence, leading on from the last topic area we've just looked at. We have a specific meeting for that, just looking at Newport relevant public impact, and a hate crime working group as well. So that working group then will look at kind of trends and any kind of concerns that we have in terms of community tensions and what we can do to support that. But for an area of focus that we're looking at, this has probably been mentioned in this meeting previously, but we are in the development / early implementation phase of looking at a women's safety charter for Newport. Again, building on the conversations we've just had, how important it is that we all know we want residents of Newport to feel safe. Women and men, we want them to be able to enjoy the city, and what we do know, steal Janice's phrase, if we make the city safe for women, it also makes it safe for men and boys as well. It's not mutually exclusive, it's just safer. And so what we want is to be able to have really meaningful kind of basis in terms of policy that businesses and organisations can engage with, but also then a more broader public campaign that can be really demonstrated via posters, billboards, all sorts of different things, maybe some street art thrown in there as well where we can, looking at kind of, well, what does it mean to be safe in the city, and how can we promote that and ensure that people are reminded of the messaging related to that. So that's in development, that is kind of in process, it's a moving entity, but we're, you know, really positive conversations with all partners. All members and multi-agencies are really engaged in this conversation. Some have even started putting practices in place already of reading the draft. So that's really positive, and we're really excited for kind of the outcome of that one as well to come. But good development quarter 1 and 2 for that one as well. And then moving on to safer places. This group does what it says. It looks at particular areas of Newport and breaks them down to be able to have something called problem-orientated planning in a multi-agency way across Newport. So we've broken it down into east, west and central, mainly because we can have individual meetings that then also mirror policing, neighbourhood policing for the city. So it ensures that we get the right members at the groups, but also the right expertise in terms of the discussions that we have. So looking at kind of key actions of progress that has happened there then really. In the east, particularly the ASB strike process has been really useful for some of the areas that have come up. Increasing patrols through hotspot funding, which Jason and the police look after there. Looking at how the youth club provision is enhanced, hopefully that's something we're all aware of, but we've got a great list now of interventions that are available across the city via either Newport Live or our own youth and play provisions. Multi-agency action days taking place, fly tipping enforcement as well. Something that we need to pick up, which was a concern a little while ago in one area of Newport, was around public transport safety. So we were looking at how we could work with local schools to enhance kind of understanding of who uses public transport, why it's really important, why it matters, and things like that. And tenancy enforcement as well being a really key area to that, working with our RSLs, but also any temporary accommodation that we may manage internally. With the West, fairly similar there as well, but also looking at PSPO enforcement and street drinking strategies, which is pertinent in the west of the city, and how we can kind of develop increased strategies and work with the enforcement powers that multi-agencies hold, what the powers that Newport hold as a council, but also the powers that the police hold to enforce those as well. And again, you'll see similar sort of challenges. One thing I would say is that in the west of the city, there was one particular area where we had a multi-agency action day, and it was really positive, but we want to expand that into some of the other areas that are listed on our profiles there. And then within Central, again, then similar thing, but utilising the other powers that we have there. So night ambassadors and the daytime ambassadors, working with them, looking at licensing and venues as well, and knowing that Newport's a great venue city, and we can utilise kind of the provisions that we have, but make them as safe as possible and as engaging as possible. And then also as part of a lot of consultation that takes place in the city generally, there's often perception surveys of the city centre that are done. So we're also monitoring the outcome of those that we might not hold, but we get provided to us. Just some ongoing areas that we need to build upon there, then radio network, event reviews, kind of pulling up and working with businesses to review how events went and working with the police around that as well. And business engagement, really making sure that we improve those communications with local businesses. And I know that in the last quarter, which is quarter 3 outside of this report timeline, Pub Watch has been kind of reinvigorated, and several of us officers will attend that to ensure that licensed premises, we understand kind of their needs, but they also are aware of kind of progress we are taking as well. And then moving on to looking at serious and violent crime subgroup. So looking at here is quite a chunky piece of work and takes into account other duties such as the serious violence duty, but this is the group where we will look at serious organised crime groups, and we will have we have very detailed conversations on there, but also we've got our knife crime working group out of that as well, which looks at knife carrying in the city and instances and development of a knife crime strategy for Newport that us as an agency, but also all agencies could utilise, especially when in public spaces. So we're working on that moving forward, but this again is just an area of focus, and what we utilise is serious violence duty money to fund the Newport Night ambassadors across the week, 2 nights a week. And this is just an incident breakdown in terms of what they have patrolled so far this year. So in terms of that, we've got 218 incidences that they have been involved with this year, which the key purpose of the Night Ambassadors is to stop escalation to crisis point, to support the work then of the police that are out, that are dealing with, you know, those more serious instances. It frees that up and support door staff where needed, and just create a safer nighttime economy space for residents of Newport. So that is the subject updates. I think I've talked for long enough, so I'll hand over to Janice now.
I think, yeah, the importance of those is often we have the so what question, and so the importance of going through those is to explain and try and illustrate some of that work that happens. It is, you know, going back to the fact it is a really strong partnership, lots of it is cross-cutting, so you'll see a lot of the updates that Helen talks about, they cross over both in relation to themes but also in relation to our partners. And we are really conscious as well of the, you know, kind of really thankful to the commitment of the partners in the partnership, because if you think about all of those subgroups, they've all got representation from our statutory partners and others. And often it's different people as well, because we've won the experts around the table in that. So our just to look at the cross-cutting themes, we have regular all chairs meetings. So the chairs of the subgroups meet with Carl and Reese, Jason and Reese as the co-chairs of the partnership, and look at actually, is there anything we need to escalate to higher up or strategically throughout any of our organisations? Is making sure that we've got full transparency, and also more importantly reducing duplication, so making sure that the resources that we have got are used in the right way, in the most effective way. And our community engagement really feeds into that, because what we think might work in a certain area and might not work for our residents is really important. We're always going back and having those conversations and to make sure we're doing the right thing. And you know, again, that's another wider teams that can support that. So our comms team throughout all our partnerships are really involved in that work as well. The biggest challenge, because I think so far we've talked about the rosy stuff, but there are challenges with the partnerships as well. One of them is around intervention mapping. So I know quite timely to have this conversation after the conversation with Amy and colleagues. There's lots of good work happening across the city with lots of different agencies, but at the moment it's really hard to bring that into one place. So we're doing a lot of work, and we're just looking at kind of what technology, as an example, can help us to understand who's doing what in what areas, what's working, what's having the biggest impact, what are people engaging with, and not only from a, you know, looking at where the gaps are, but also in relation to be able to signpost some of our residents or businesses or families if they're having some problems. So that's a kind of a big piece of work that is taking a significant amount of effort and resource to be able to get right. attendance and engagement levels are really good at the moment. They're really positive. It is a very engaged partnership, but as people move, there is a risk based on individuals a lot of the time. So really kind of that's a constant monitoring work that we do there. But also the themes highlight that importance of collaboration. None of this we can do on our own. And even if you just look at the Safer Places update that Tanya just gave, if you think about some of the teams that are involved, obviously the police neighbourhoods were involved, police comms were involved. Even from NCC, we've got youth and play service, prevention and intervention. We've got the EPP services for the trading standards and the licences. So even within the council, it's a massive partnership, and it wouldn't happen if it was just in one team. Communication of all of that, and also the right resource allocation to achieve our strategic objectives. There's a constant moving feet. So I know we said this in the introduction. We've got a plan, we work towards the plan and the action plan, but also being able to be responsive to things that come up that we wouldn't necessarily know about, and how do we respond to that. So I think just as conclusion at mid-year, we think we're in a strong position. We've got the established structures, and we've got some really kind of momentum moving forward to some of the projects that we talked about, and multi-agency planning. We are also showing how the subgroups are kind of responding to emerging needs, particularly in different areas where we often have this, don't we, in Newport, that we might have an issue in one area, we kind of put our resources into that area, but actually what happens then is it goes to a different area. So it is about how do we kind of follow that around and look at what's worked to stop it in one area and replicate that in another in the way that works for those residents. Priorities for the second half of the year is our mapping that we talked about, advancing our hotspot work as well, and then supporting the intelligence subgroup to mature. So we really are, evidence-based and kind of on top of things as much as we can be, and making sure that we're embedding our consultation findings into our operational and strategic findings. We also need to further develop and strengthen partnership working across our strategic partners. And one of the ways of communicating it kind of wider amongst the whole organisation. So how do we work more closely to be able to reflect on the positive changes that we've had, and making sure we're sharing those kind of stories internally and externally. Then the whole we all work together achieving the objectives, but actually our ultimate aim is to make Newport safer for everyone. And it's a really positive kind of partnership that supports that. So I think that's it from us. So is there any questions of each other?
Thank you very much, Dave. If I can come in with Councillor Drew, first of all, with your question, please.
Sure. We all need to feel safe in our city. And I appreciate the work of the Safe Newport Partnership. Thank you. My question is about demographics. Which demographic groups are most frequently involved in antisocial behaviour? And what evidence supports this, and how are vulnerable individuals being identified early to prevent escalation into enforcement, and how is the Safer Newport strategy engaging in schools to counter the social media narrative with the likes of Andrew Tate?
Okay, demographics wise, that's one of the things that the intelligence group will be able to support. We're not that mature yet. I think, from a police perspective, we could probably break down this in crime, but in relation to the wider perspective, that's one of the things that the Safer Newport group intelligence group will be working on. But that's really important for us because it kind of, we need to understand whether there's any kind of increased representation in any particular community group, and that helps us to be able to target some of those interventions. Helen can talk a lot about the work that we're doing in schools and how we're doing in schools with our young people, and Amy touched on a lot of it in relation to the work that they've been doing as well. So it's very much a partnership impact. So you mentioned the community focus subgroup. So obviously the work of the VAWDASV team is really integrated into that. But yeah, I don't want to steal too much of your thunder.
Yeah, no, I think as well, like messaging within schools, I think schools are very keenly aware of the impact of social media, and just to mention, in terms of the partnership, we also have education represented across the board at our meetings and ensure that doorway of communication is very open, and we have ongoing conversations. So that will come up in terms of antisocial behaviour through the strike process. We look at young people and children that might be active within communities during the day, and look at school provision around that and things like that. But in terms of ongoing conversations, we're about to pilot a knife crime piece of work within schools, which has been done by a local spoken word artist, be recorded with a lesson plan to go with it, for them to consider, well, what does knife crime mean to them, and you know, a very early intervention conversation to be had at year 7 predominantly. But outside of that, we're actually working on a bit more of a suite of packages like that, one of which being violence against women and girls, that should be able to support the conversations that already take place in schools, either via kind of the Spectrum programme through VAWDASV, but something, just more tools in the toolbox really to be able to draw out those conversations with young people, and give them a space to also communicate how they feel about it. And I think, you know, open expression around it is really important, and then we can effectively challenge it. And that's easy for me to say. I'm not a teacher, I'm not in the schools. But, you know, having several friends who are teachers, I understand that, you know, it's a difficult conversation, it's a difficult place to be, but is also a really incredibly safe space for children to be able to explore those with trusted adults that they have around them at the time. So that's really what we utilise, kind of those, but also youth provisions, youth clubs, the likes of Newport Life, the likes of NCC Youth and Play Service, where those relationships are naturally there as well. And looking outside of education to community settings as well, where we can promote these messages, and that will be part of ongoing work, and hopefully will be something we can build on with the safety chapter as well.
Sorry, Chair, just to say that unfortunately Jason is unable to unmute, Jason White, so that's why he's putting things in the chat.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So just there.
That's fine. Just going to ask you to read it because you're closer to it, just so obviously it's in there. Okay, so we have a new approach to working with schools under the Safer Schools programme, replaced with Welsh-funded school liaison officers, which involves local neighbourhood teams who are engaging far more frequently with the school and providing inputs into topical matters, including antisocial behaviour, knife crime, online crime, etc. Okay, thank you. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. I'm going to bring in Councillor Bright for the next question. I know you have to go shortly, so it's just to make sure that you get in. I have advised Councillor Bright, if you can't answer this question until the next meeting in March, that's fine. But just as a kind of thing that's already been mentioned. But if I can bring you in, Councillor Bright, thank you.
Yeah, cheers. Chair, thank you. Thank you for the report. Twice in the report, in bullet point 2.1 and 2.4, it's mentioned that it's hard to get people to submit data. I mean, one of the goes talks about focus is lagging. So what? I mean, what are the barriers stopping people to submitting the data that's required? Are we really? I mean, are we asking too much of them, or is it real arduous paper process, or is AI going to help improve that? Because twice in the report we mentioned that we're not getting the data that's needed, and how can we facilitate better collection of data? That's my question, I guess.
I think data is always a challenge, so with another head-on is something we're looking at from a Gwent Public Services Board perspective as well, and in relation to health inequalities, and a lot of it is not for want of people wanting to share, so I'll put that out there. There's no one partner, as an example, saying we're not going to share our data. It is very much about how the logistics of being able to share that data. But there's the risk around different people measure information in different ways. So sometimes you are looking at apples and pears rather than big pieces of information, and so there's that risk. There's also a risk of double counting. So there might be information that we hold, as an example, on individuals that the police also hold. So we might end up in a situation where we've got double the kind of risk or the numbers that we're looking at. So that's another kind of thing that we need to be aware of. GDPR, so making sure we're not sharing any kind of, you know, personal information, sensitive information, unless it's to prevent a crime or address a crime. But yeah, and then the API kind of technology bits will also be hopefully be helpful in getting our system to talk to each other as well, and kind of streamlining that process. But I think it is an issue, but it's something that's being talked about in lots of different kind of areas across Gwent, in particular in Newport, and how we can all work together. The Gwent Strategic Needs Assessment, as an example, and the public health team are managing in and around Erbyn, is a real good, because it's got the resource from the public health researchers and good journalists, and how we can make better use of that to be able to get a true picture of all of our partnership across Gwent. But the analysis as well is really important. So, for example, if we just looked at police data, we could look at crimes increasing. What we need, as an example, so what we need to understand is actually, are things getting worse, or is it that people are reporting more, or that the address rates are kind of improving, so the efficiency of that work is doing so the experts around the table in relation to be able to analyse any information that we do get is just as important. Sorry.
Yeah, so can I just appreciate that in terms of what was originally data subgroup that's now turned into the intelligence subgroup is in part for the reason that Janice has just mentioned, that data will only tell us one thing, but the analysis of it is another. And where we have genuinely struggled in terms of getting data is part of that consistent data that is comparable, that helps to ensure that the picture is fuller. And again, just to reiterate, it's not that any agency is not willing to share it. What we're just trying to do at the moment, and we're kind of breaking through that barrier a little bit now, is to establish the data sets that already exist within agencies, so that we're not asking for duplication, but that we're asking for them to consider what data they already have, what data they already provide to other agencies that is relevant to come into the community safety partnership space. So it's just taking a little bit of analytical work, but you know, I'm confident in the, oh, that was strong, wasn't it? Confident. I'm hopeful that in the next quarter and the next update, as part of kind of strategic needs analysis, that we'll be able to have a more robust system for sharing that data. I've got an intelligence subgroup meeting coming up next week, so I'm hoping that we'll have some more positive outcomes from it there.
We'll make sure that as confident as approach.
That's going to be the strategy now.
No, thank you. Reece, I think you want to come in on this one as well, did you?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And that's a really good question, Councillor Bright, because I think if you look back to the strategic needs assessment, there was what we highlighted in the strategic needs assessment, which led to the community safety plan, was an over-reliance on police and local authority data in order to drive the objective setting within that. And quite clearly, we need a much broader, richer set of data in order to understand better what the issues are and better actually the impacts we're having as a partnership. I think the other bit I'd just like to say, so I think that's the reason for setting up this intelligence group. We need the data. We need the data in a consistent way from a broader range of partners, and we need it in a way that we can analyse and we can actually interrogate and we can say, actually, this is what it's telling us. Go back to the question Councillor Druitt asked about what's the demographics around ASB. Well, you know, we need to know those things because that's where our target should be focused. But just for reassurance to the committee, we have got a lot of data, and actually data sharing is absolutely not an issue when there is an issue or an incident, because there are powers within we are given powers within the Crime and Disorder Act to share data in those circumstances. So if there's an issue that we need to get to around individuals or groups, that we can share that data comfortably and protected by the law in those circumstances.
Thanks very much, Reece. And just to clarify, because obviously it has come up a few times in reports there, and I know jokingly we say confident, but obviously hopeful it will progress. In terms of progressing it, what type of things is needed? Is there needed any extra resources that you haven't already had, or is it just at the moment it's just that the conversations and talking to each other how systems work? Where do we stand to know where it's going to progress and how it's going to progress?
I think predominantly from my point of view and sitting in that subgroup, it's time. And given that we established that group less than 12 months ago, and I've only had 2 meetings to date for that because it's been quarterly. We are looking at putting to the group that we're going to meet 6 to 8 weekly instead, to again improve that communication, so that, you know, a long time in between means that you kind of get a dip in investment. So I'm hopeful that time will kind of prove its worth with this one. But obviously any barriers that we face, it's very much from a subgroup level, we would push that then back through the Strategic Partnership Board, so that they are then able to take that on as a strategic action, so that Rhys and Jason as chairs can kind of promote that through those strategic managers that are involved at the partnership level.
No, that's fine, because we don't want to be in that point where, like, next time we say it's concerning now, we're up to this point now and obviously seeing this, because we want to see it progress. And obviously if it's on the paper to see progression and it's stalling because of things, obviously we want to get behind the scenes and understand why. So hopefully, and best wishes with it, that obviously the work that's being portrayed and the fact that you're saying obviously meeting more regularly, things like that, they will have that ability to hopefully move things around that a little bit more. So thank you for that. Okay, if I can bring in Councillor Bev Davis, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. Very interesting report. A couple of questions I had have already been answered with regards to questions that Councillor Bright had. Do still have a few questions though. Regarding community input, are there community panels or advisory groups in place?
The quick answer to that is no, not currently, but we will utilise ones that are already in existence. So the residents group and the 50+ forum, for example, we utilise that on a regular basis when we have questions, but it's not something that exists within the partnership as standard outside of perhaps what other agencies have in terms of their public facing conversations. So we will put that to members of subgroups, but members of the board as well, and the agencies there to engage with the public that they're involved with, but it's not something that we hold ourselves within the partnership.
I think, yeah, so I mean, we talk about engagement a lot, don't we? But we tend to use engagement specific events rather than just having one. So we work a lot with community leaders and groups that are already existing in Newport and in different areas. So as an example, when we did the strategic needs assessment, we worked really closely with Community House and some of the groups that were happening there and the gap. And then we try and go to as many local events as we can as well, particularly through the summer. We did a lot of work there because often people who sit on groups not always representative of the people of Newport. So it's important that we have that both elements, that lots of people that have lots of things to say and would be really helpful wouldn't necessarily put themselves forward to be part of a residents group. So we need to use both of those methods, I think, to make sure we're getting a fuller kind of understanding from everyone.
Thank you. How is feedback that you get influencing the current priorities?
So one example is the ASB assessment that we've just talked about. So it's in early days at the moment, but the results of that work are going to be fed back into the ASB subgroup and to help inform the action plan. So there's some really quick win learning that we've had that we've kind of responded to straight away. But actually the wider feedback and analysis will then help to inform the work of that subgroup for the next kind of couple of months to a year.
Thank you. I mean, my next question, I suppose, would be directed towards Jason White, but obviously he's not been able to answer. I will just mention it though, with regards to, is there a rapid response protocol for emerging threats? I suppose it is difficult for Jason to answer that.
I think, yeah, Jason can put something in the chat, but also we can get back to you, Councillor, afterwards if that's helpful.
That's lovely, thank you. I would also like to thank Jason White with regards to, I have seen myself that there is a large police presence in the city centre now than there was before. So thank you for that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you all. I'll allow Jason to write in, I believe, which should be an answer in a second, but I'll ask questions in between. Just piggybacking off Councillor Davis, what she just mentioned. At the beginning, we saw in the presentation about 300 engagements or so, some of them online. I think it's the outreach of where we are. In comparison to social media, well, that's a very small outreach on that side. Just looking about, obviously, how are we looking to address that? Is it because, you know, the comms, how are we getting out there? Are we not using, you know, the right resources to get out there into the wider world, and just seeing the scope of how are we going out? And I know we spoke about numbers and how they're representative amongst the population, but is there kind of ideas of roughly how big, you know, a kind of sample you want from across the communities or groups and individuals within the city?
I think the ASB one that we did is probably the lowest number in relation to it, but that's because in some ways it was because the conversations are more in depth. So a lot of the conversations, a lot of the surveys as an example we do, or feedback we do, is very much like yes, no, but these were really in depth, kind of like almost half an hour conversation with each person that we stopped. So that kind of, it meant that we saw less people, but we actually had a richer response. But I know we're constantly looking at how can we engage more, how can we make sure we're getting more representative kind of response. But yeah, the ASB one, the numbers are slightly skewed just because of the type of kind of, you know, conversations that we were having. So I know, Helen, as an example, you spent quite a lot of time with somebody talking about, you know, kind of what does it mean in their backyard, you know, and often it can be quite upsetting for people, so you can't just shut down a conversation to talk to the next person. So it was a very different survey, if you like. Our perception surveys, we usually get about, well, over 1,000 responses, because that is a quick kind of, you know, litmus paper test on best Wi-Fi as an example, whereas this was a very different approach.
Yeah, so. and we didn't place this on best Wi-Fi because of the speed of which you can't complete it, but also in terms of the social media impressions, just to put that out there, that this was based on stories, so they're only there for 24 hours as well. So the time in which, you know, if you see it, you know, there's technicalities to that as well, of which I'm no expert. So it's something that we've been exploring more with comms team in terms of how we reach engagement, but also we were hoping that social media would maybe reach a slightly different demographic. So we were looking at what those demographics could be and do a bit more work on that. But as Janice said, that actually the richness of that engagement has come from the long conversations, which long conversations with approximately 200 people is quite a length of time.
I think, and I take on board what you're noting as well, and obviously long surveys. I know some people don't want to sit there for the round of the best time on doing these surveys. I think, you know, as a, not just being chair, but sitting as a councillor, it'd be nice to have an update, like we're going to be launching this, would you be able to share it, would you be able to tell people things like that there, because we're in community groups and things like that there, so we'd be able to get, you know, within our groups, and we know people chat to us on a day-to-day basis about various issues, so we can highlight, well, here's another way that you can be vocal about it. I suppose that links on to the other question. Do we link off like on the I think it's the ONS survey, the local crime survey, things like that there, as well as the PSBO, so the public safety protection orders. Do we link off the kind of yes nos, but also the qualitative data that we get from those also?
The ONS work is a lot of what the new group is looking at, kind of, you know, because we always have the conversation about, does it reflect what we're seeing on the ground? And again, going back to the analysis and the data, that's one of the things that the subgroup are looking at, and being able to draw that down. And another thing that the kind of Bevan Joint Strategic Needs Assessment group are looking at as well is all of these national data sets, and what does that tell us? So yeah, and you know, Jason as well, like they quite often share the national police data as well, which is another indication that we use to be able to understand.
Thank you. I do note that Jason has responded in the chat, so I'll just read it out. So just going back to Councillor Davis's question about the rapid response. So there would be a rapid response to any type of escalation, but the resources assigned to it would be dependent on the incident and threat posed. We have the ability to cancel rest days for police officers if the threat posed is spontaneous or significant one, and he's happy to provide a fuller reply if we're to provide more detail on the specific ask. So it's just a fine-tuning the question to be able to get that further response there. Councillor Davis, did you want to come back on reading that response at all, or would you like to correspond differently?
Thank you, Chair. I hadn't noticed that that there was a response up. No, I think I'm quite happy with the response that I've had to that question.
Thank you very much, Councillor Davis. I'm going to bring in Councillor Whitehead now, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of observations from me, really. I mean, ASB is a massive umbrella, and the dynamics of ASB are also great. I mean, you've got the city centre. ASB is totally different, really, to the ASB that happens on the estates across Newport. The city centre has its bright lights. It acts like a honeypot, doesn't it? So that's the impacts there, for example, are obvious on businesses, etc. And I think literally people, especially the businesses in town, have been crying out for firmer action there, and I'm hoping that's going to be the case after this. A couple of observations from the key actions in progress. It is good to see in there youth clubs in particular, because I can't help thinking with the reduction in youth services, I do believe that there was a contribution to ASB, and I just think that's an honest answer. That was a reality. For example, and I can only use this estate, we used to have a youth club and it would be 80 kids in there, and that number is dramatically reduced with the reduction in the services. So it's good to see that that's in there, if that makes sense. And also, and I don't really like to even use this terminology, the tenancy enforcement. I don't like to use that because that it suggests people losing their houses and stuff, but sometimes radical solutions have to be found. And I will give you a good example whereby we had a nameless family on the estate that were quite terrifying the school. I mean, Jason White, I'm not going to mention no names, he probably is aware of this. And there were children there that were terrifying the school and the estate, and it took the threat of tenancy enforcement that the person reached out to me and was terrified. I didn't enjoy that, but miraculously, within, I'm going to say, a month to 6 weeks, things went a little bit quieter. So I suppose that does prove, albeit as draconian as it is, that sometimes you have to show tough love, and that's a good example of it. I mean, you know, it's the roof over your head. If you're not going to behave, etc., or get on top of what's happening, there are repercussions, because some people act as if there's so what, but that there is a reality, and it has to be a reality. So it was also good to see that in there. Plus, like I say, with the city centre in particular, you've got drugs and the use of drink, and again, it's good to see the street drinker strategy in there. So you know, I think we all got to acknowledge that it's a nightmare area, ASB, and it always will be. Peaks and troughs on the estate, as Jason will know. We'll have moments of calm, and then we'll have a surge. I mean, it was embarrassing. I think it might have been last year, Jason, whereby I actually put in for the PSBO, and lo and behold, we seem to have a calm hit us, so we couldn't be justified. But it's also good to know that we've also got that as an option. So they're my views, and obviously I'm appreciative of all the work, and I know that this area is a thankless task, because it's something that will always go on in degrees. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. I'm not sure if any of the officers want to respond to what they've heard there. No, thank you. Okay, no problems. Thank you. I believe Councillor Bright is due to leave, but I'll do a round robin in a second as well there. Councillor John Jones, do you have any questions that you wish to add?
Yes, Madam Chair. Just due to your surveys and feedback from the residents that you've got, I saw a few people in my ward, and when I said about what makes it feel safe in Newport is when they travel around or they go shopping, etc. There's well-lit areas, CCTV reassures them, and obviously high number of population, as in shoppers or fellow walkers in the area. Did you find any feedback that way as well on any surveys?
Yeah, I think from businesses, but also from public, lighting is a frequent safety measure that people find comforting and find that actually that's something that helps them to feel safe in an area for obvious reasons. And I know that the impact of CCTV as well is something that's been talked about significantly, especially by the leader at points recently. But it's also something that is an ongoing conversation, especially in the city centre, around kind of nighttime economy. And that's something that we're looking at in particular in kind of Pub Watch coming up next week. So those conversations in terms of resource and any, you know, improvement or mapping and kind of need analysis on that is part of ongoing conversations.
It was, sorry, that was because of winter with the dark nights. Obviously, it's relevant because that's what people when they were shopping for Christmas and what made the safety kind of seemed to be mentioned a little bit. But with Newport, it's just they said about the lighting and the CCTV making feel safer to stay in Newport and do the shopping.
I guess well, we work really closely with the placemaking plan, etc. that has been provided with the police kind of designing out crime teams as well, and making sure that right from the beginning we're designing environments that feel safe for people.
There were some positives fed back as well. Obviously, CCTV program and the police presence is increasing. There seems to be more awareness, but lighting seems to be. I didn't think about that. You just take the natural granted, don't you? It's always going to be there. But yeah, that was a good feedback.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehead, just to advise you in the chat, if you haven't seen already, Jason has messaged the community action team is now deployed in the Bettis area to complement and support the existing neighbourhood team in tackling ASB and crime. So just to advise you, it's there, Councillor. Okay.
Yeah, I'm reading it as you speak, Chair. I'll acknowledge it now. Thank you.
No worries there. Thank you both. If I can ask Councillor Hussain, have you got any questions on this one, please?
No questions from me, Chair.
No problems. Thank you very much, Councillor Hussain. If I can also ask Councillor Peterson, please.
No, I don't have no questions, Chair.
No worries at all. I'm just making sure. And Alan Screen, Councillor Alan Screen, please.
No questions, Chair.
No worries at all. I think that's everyone, if I'm not mistaken there. If not, sound up now. That's a no, that's positive. Okay, no problems at all. If I can ask Neil just to go back over the points there of comments and things like that there to the feedback. Thank you.
Just Councillor Davis' comment about the rapid response. Jason's already responded to that. I'm not sure whether I'm getting more details than what Jason provided. Otherwise, we can leave that on out. Your comment here about the perception surveys. It'd be good if councils could be made aware of any future surveys and let residents know. Other than that, was there any other comments or recommendations the committee would like to make in regards to the report?
Before we finish, actually, on my side, I did have noted, apologies. 48, page 48, there's a subgroup Gypsy Roma Traveller group. I'm just wondering, are we taking any ideas or best practice from Cardiff? Because I believe they have offices and things like that there, and they have quite sufficient groups. Are we learning lessons from them, essentially?
Yes, is the answer. And that process has kind of already been put in place for a little while now. So that group actually has moved, which was looking at that in particular, and then investments from Cardiff and looking at appropriate process for dealing with new and emerging sites has been taken on board, and a process is now in place, and so contingencies are involved to that along with communities. But that is now moved into a task and finish group, and so actually we now look at things as kind of high risk needs. So we look at that when, as a multi-agency group, when we need to, because it's felt that process is working.
Thank you. And any updates and future reports would be good. Thank you very much there. And obviously back to, I don't think there's any other comments in that one. So, yeah. No worries at all. Thank you very much there. Fine, right, I've got my notes. There we are. Thank you. So that's everything from yourselves there. So if the officers want to go, that's fine. Thank you very much there. Thank you for your time this evening and for the good report there. Thank you all. Okay, thank you, colleagues. So it just remains just a small number of things left now. So if we can go on to agenda item number 5, which is the Scrutiny Advisory Report, please.
Thanks very much, Chair. Sorry. So whilst my agenda is that's just to confirm that the next meeting will be held will be now in March. Very much, Chair. That would be the 11th of March at 5 o'clock. That would be the Safe and Newport Community Safety Partnership City Centre update. So what we whatever queries the members would like to ask in relation to the city centre safety, this could be discussed there. The 18th of February meeting has been cancelled, and this will be now moved to July. And then on the 25th of March, we'll have the Newport Live update. Also, what we've included in the report for the actions and recommendations is just an overview of all the requests that the committee have made, where they've gone. For example, so thank you. So during the June and December, the committee made 13 recommendations and requested 13 actions whilst considering 6 reports. It's just to give just further screenshot really of what the committee's recommendations, where they go in and what we're doing with them and the answers that we're getting from officers. What we're planning on doing at the end of the year as well, we'll add the additional 6 months onto there. So the committee will have a complete view of everything that we've been recommending during the year. And that's everything on my venture.
Yep, cool. No problems at all. Thank you very much, Neil. Good on technology at the best of times. There we are. So if we go to the agenda item 6, which is the minutes of the previous meeting, which were held on the 19th of November, and just a reminder that was with Newport North. Can I have a proposer, or first of all, is there any amendments or anything of accuracy that people want to raise? I'm seeing no's. That's fine. Thank you. And can I have a proposer for those that were here, please, to say they're accurate? Thank you, Councillor Davis, and a seconder, please.
I'll second that, Chair.
That's great. Thank you very much, all. So that leaves that on the report side. So that's everything for this evening. So I appreciate your time this evening, and hopefully you won't be too cold in the next few days, but look after yourselves and your families, and appreciate your time this evening. Thank you.